For many, Jeff Bezos is considered the richest person on Earth. However, there have been numerous billionaires and even trillionaires before him. Jeff Bezos's fortune is estimated at $177 billion. Yet, when compared to the kings and emperors of the last 2,000 years, the Amazon CEO is almost lightweight. So, without further ado, here are the top 5 richest people in world history. Number 5. John D. Rockefeller. Jeff Bezos may be the current richest American, but he still has a long way to go to reach the wealth of the richest American in history. John D. Rockefeller, a name you should be familiar with, was an oil tycoon with a fortune of $400 billion. He founded the Standard Oil Company in 1870, and shortly after, his rise began. By 1880, the Standard Oil Company controlled about 90% of the entire American oil production. Oil was referred to as black gold back then, and it made him the first dollar billionaire in history. Rockefeller's wealth accounted for almost 2% of the entire U.S. economy at the time. He lived an incredibly comfortable life and owned houses across America. One particularly special house was Kikuit, a 4-story country estate with 40 rooms and a view over all of New York. It took 6 years to complete the house. Today, its grand interiors are adorned with a collection of Chinese and European ceramics, fine furniture, and 20th century art. Kikuit is surrounded by a large parkland with sculptures, and it can be visited by the public. Rockefeller was not well liked by the public, but that changed somewhat in his later years as he donated 10% of his income annually to charitable organizations. Number 4. Akbar I. Akbar I ruled as the Grand Mughal of the Indian dynasty in the 15th century. His wealth is estimated to be around $500 billion, although some claim it was even more. As a direct descendant of Genghis Khan, Akbar had ruling and conquering in his blood. From the moment he ascended the throne, he worked hard to conquer as much territory as possible. By the end of his reign, known as the Mughal Empire, he had tripled the conquered territory, spanning across India to northern Afghanistan. He was renowned for his religious tolerance, which was unheard of at that time. Despite being a Muslim, many of his advisors were Hindu. He played a significant role in bridging these two religions and allowed people the freedom to choose their own religion. He was also known for translating literary works from Hindu and played a major role in Hindu festivals. There is limited information on how he spent his wealth, but it is believed that the ruling class at that time lived an unimaginably lavish lifestyle. His empire accounted for 25% of the global GDP. His palace was adorned with exquisite carvings, paintings, and rare furniture pieces. Number 3. Emperor Song Shenzong. The number 3 among the richest people in history is also one of the most mysterious. Emperor Shenzong of the Song dynasty ruled from 1067 to 1085. Fortunately for him, this was a prosperous and affluent era in China. They were the top producers of bronze ceramics in the world, and farmers were granted ownership of their own lands. Rice production skyrocketed and became the mainstay of the economy. In addition, gunpowder and magnetic compasses were invented during this time. The Song dynasty was able to develop the first paper currency and formed the first navy group. The navy protected the trade routes and valuable goods. With all these innovations, his empire controlled 30% of the global GDP. The Song dynasty was one of the most powerful economic forces of all time. The dynasty owed its immense wealth to its technological advancements and a sophisticated tax system. The ruler accumulated the wealth and had full control over it. Unfortunately, the exact size of his fortune is difficult to determine, but experts believe it was well beyond the billion-dollar mark. Shenzong was also known as a generous giver and is considered a pioneer of the social welfare system. His principles and rules improved the conditions of the unemployed, homeless, and farmers. Number 2. Caesar Augustus. Julius Caesar may be more well known to you, but his successor Augustus was the wealthier of the two. He is the only confirmed billionaire in history. He once ruled over an empire that accounted for 30% of the global GDP. According to experts, the private wealth of the Roman emperor amounted to around 1/5 of the gross domestic product, which would be approximately $4.6 trillion in today's terms. Although his wealth was largely due to his position as emperor, Augustus also inherited a significant fortune at the age of 18 from his great-uncle Julius Caesar, although no one can say exactly how much it was. He then fought his way to the imperial throne in a bloody civil war. But it wasn't just Julius Caesar who left money to Augustus. Many wealthy families gave him a portion of their assets in the hope of securing political protection for their children. During his 40-year reign of prosperity, he doubled the size of the Roman Empire. No other emperor witnessed such growth in the empire as under his rule. He established a standing army, a firefighting force, a courier service, and built roads, effectively bringing Rome into the modern age. He lived in a palace known as the House of Augustus. The House of Augustus featured rooms dedicated to art and weaponry, with mosaics adorning every hallway and fresco paintings on every wall. When he died, one of the last recorded things he said was, "I found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble." The so-called Augustan peace is remembered as a flourishing era in history. In fact, Augustus ushered in a long period of political and economic stability throughout the Mediterranean and beyond. It is said that his reign marked a 200-year era of peace and prosperity. Number 1. The wealthiest person in history is probably someone you've never heard of before, but now you will never forget the name: Mansa Musa. He controlled such an immense fortune that modern historians can only estimate how much the king of Timbuktu truly possessed. But it is believed to be more than $400 trillion. He rode on camels through Africa, transporting tons of gold, and that was just peanuts for him. He became the ruler of the Mali Empire around the year 1300, when his predecessor disappeared while exploring the end of the Atlantic. It's unfortunate for his predecessor that he didn't stay on land because he would have had a pretty good life. During Mansa Musa's reign, Europe was grappling with major problems such as famine, civil wars, and the so-called Black Death. Mansa Musa conquered 24 cities and their districts during the early phase of his rule, isolating himself from the rest of the world. Even in Egypt, he was not well known until Mansa Musa embarked on his journey to Mecca. As a Muslim, the pilgrimage to Mecca was an important part of his religion. His journey to Mecca covered over 6,400 kilometers, and he certainly didn't make it alone. He took 8,000 soldiers, 12,000 slaves, numerous messengers, and servants with him. He even had singers for his entertainment and his own personal chefs. There were at least 80 camels carrying 17 tons of gold in their pouches. As he traveled through Africa, he was a special attraction to everyone he encountered. He often donated lavishly in cities and gave gold as gifts. When word reached Cairo that he was pilgrimaging to Mecca, Sultan an-Nasir invited him to visit his palace. At first, Mansa Musa refused, but he eventually yielded to an-Nasir's persistence. There was a brief tension when Mansa Musa refused to kiss the foot of Sultan an-Nasir, which was a gesture of respect at the time. Eventually, he relented, and the Sultan offered him accommodation for the night. It was surely an unforgettable experience for him, but at the time, he had plenty to laugh about. The streets were paved with gold, and the people reveled in the wealth he had brought. Unfortunately, his generous gifts caused significant problems. The value of precious metals plummeted, leading to inflation. It took 12 years for the cities of Cairo, Medina, and Mecca to recover financially. It is also said that during his journey to Mecca, he built a new mosque every Friday. Upon his arrival in Mecca, he dedicated himself entirely to his religion. When he returned to his homeland, he had numerous palaces, mosques, and universities built throughout the Mali Empire. He established the Sankore Madrasa, a center of learning in Timbuktu, which housed 1 million manuscripts and rivaled the Library of Alexandria. Unfortunately, shortly after Mansa Musa's death in 1337, the Mali Empire began to decline. Relentless civil wars weakened the country, and its trading capacity began to diminish. And so, the king's pursuit of glory, his journey, and the display of his wealth ultimately proved Africa's downfall as greedy Europeans, in search of riches, subjugated the entire continent. So, there you have it, the top 5 wealthiest individuals in world history. Do you think Jeff Bezos will ever catch up to any of them? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel now, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. May the wealth be with you.